Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 RBC Canadian DFS Tactics show. Got a lot to get into to make our favorite lineups, our best plays, favorite fades, guys we want to go to with pivots and such. And there are quite a few field changes, so let me cover those real quick for you all. In case you all haven't seen the show Monday night, the Data Dive show, there were 5 field changes or withdrawals that night, or up to that night. It was Taylor Pendrith, DJ Trahan, Luke List, Kevin Chappell, and Fabian Gomez. Since that time, there have been 6 more withdrawals, and I'm sure social media has blown up with the big one. Patrick Reed has withdrawn. He is going to the Live Tour. But at the Canadian Open, there are 5 others: Adam Schenk, Pat Perez, Jared Wolf, Andres Romero, Nate Lashley, and CT Pan. So a total of 12 withdrawals from the beginning of the week. So if you have already submitted lineups with those players, go change your lineups now. Double check. Make sure you don't have those players in your lineups as they are not playing. But as I mentioned, we're here for the players that are here, going to make our lineups. There is a lineup that I've been gravitating towards, a style of lineup. So I have been mixing and matching around this kind of shell. So I'm excited to show you all what I've been working with. And then there are a couple of 6K plays that I really like. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best resource out there. It is going to make you a much better DFS player. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler. It is simply the best tool out there. It's well worth your investment. It allows me to do what I do. Go check them out. It's well worth your time. In the descriptions to the videos, there are links to my social media where I place my betting cards, which I will do after the show tonight, and any interesting research that I find throughout the week. I did not do any for the Canadian this week, being a new course, so I will absolutely make up for that with the U.S. Open at Brookline next week. We'll be hitting the research hard this weekend, trying to find a pattern on winners of the past few U.S. Opens. So if you want to see some of that research, then give me a follow at the links in the descriptions to my social media. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. Want all the questions that you have. If you are between this player and that player, what kind of lineup shell are you thinking about? Do you want to try to build some lineups around a player or a combination of players? Who do you think is going to be an unsung hero maybe this week in the low 7s or 6Ks? Who is your favorite fade? Who are you turning to that's projected to be low ownership? Here for all that. So let's figure out our tactics and strategies for the 2022 RBC Canadian Open. And we move to the mixed condition model that I ended up at for this week. Let me get everything situated here. Hopefully the camera focuses in here. Sorry about that. My camera wanted to go on the fritz. That'll definitely be edited out of YouTube. Anyway, so this is the mixed condition model that I ended for the week. And we talked all week about how the course was going to be short, so I really leaned into that because that is the one consistent factor that I know to be true. I think the tournament's going to play easy. Others don't in the industry. So while I'm pretty confident that it's going to be easy, it's certainly not going to be as easy as I originally thought on Sunday evening in the initial research. Because of that, I really leaned into the short course because we know for a fact it's going to be a short course. So, in the data model, I started with 10% strokes gained total, your best performers just on short courses, period. Put that at 10%. With this being a new course, new in terms of Fantasy National data, the Canadian Open has not been here since 2010. I went 15% strokes gained approach, and I really wanted to put 20%. The one thing that I do agree with most of the analysts and pundits in the industry is that this is going to be a ball strikers course. Not necessarily as much off the tee, although it'll probably be important to stay in the fairway. But really a second shot course, especially with the greens as small as they are. So I really wanted to put 20% here. I left it at 15 to make sure I covered other statistics that I think will be a factor this week. We talked Sunday night a lot about the when I thought it was going to be very, very easy and how we looked at birdies are better. We even looked at eagles. Monday, we kind of changed course a little bit, and I mentioned that if it is not going to be easy, then it would switch from an eagles and birdies to an opportunities gained. So I went ahead and went to that metric at 10%. But because I'm still leaning that it'll be easy, I kept birdies or better gained at 5% because the two par fives are going to be great eagle chances. So I didn't want to just look at birdies because I think there will be a fair number of eagles this week. So I put 5% in the birdies or better, and both of those being on short courses. Again, if I knew for a fact that this was going to be easy, I would have went into some of the easy filters. If I knew for a fact this was going to be difficult, I would have went into the difficult factors. I'm still under the impression it's going to be easier than difficult. And then to round out the rest of the data model, greens in regulation gain. Again, I just mentioned that the greens are small. I think this is going to be a second shot course, so I've really set it up for second shot players. Strokes gained approach, greens in regulation. 5% in sand saves. There are a lot of bunkers around the green. Not so much fairway bunkers, although there are plenty. But being a second shot course, if a player is offline, it's going to be paramount for them to be able to scramble out of the sand. So I went 5% in sand saves. Sometimes I'll do that in difficult or in easy. I just put sand saves in general since I don't know what the difficulty is going to be at the end of the week. 5% in proximity, 175 to 200. And I normally don't put a whole lot of weight in proximity if I do at all. If you follow me for any time, you know that this is the one statistic that I struggle with. If you are a new watcher or new viewer, thank you for tuning in. But the reason that I have trouble with proximity is, as a statistical analyst in my former life, if you will, I have trouble matching what graphically, say, Fantasy National has or says that should be the most important range of proximity and what I am seeing data-wise. So just full transparency there, that is the statistic that I struggle the most with. So with this being a new course, data-wise and all that, the 2010 Canadian Open had the majority of approach shots come from 175 to 200 and 200 plus, but I focused on the 175 to 200 because the relation to the amount of shots here from 175 to 200 is much higher than the average tour event. So 5% there, and then 10% in the par threes from 200 to 225. 4 of the par fives here at St. George's, Ontario, measure this length. So felt pretty confident that if there is a lot of par 3 value, it's just in this length. Same goes for the par 4s at 450 to 500. As many as 7 are in this range. They will be moved around some with tees and green and pin placements and all that stuff, but realistically, there can be as many as 7 of the 9 par 4s can fall into this range during the week. So I put that at 10%. I didn't want to ignore the other par 5s, so I put I did not want to ignore the other par 4s, so I put 5% in just total strokes gained par 4. And then par 5s total just 10%. You have the one fairly long, apparently true 3-shot par 5 at 570 yards. Then you have the 2 fantastic eagle chances. Both both of them sub 550 yards. So I wanted to make sure I encapsulated all three of the par fives. Although if I had to take a guess, the 500 to 550 yard par fives are going to be more important. But I didn't feel comfortable breaking it out, so I just put 10% total par fives. So that's a look at the filters and the percentages that I used. I always like to give the potential downfalls of my models, just in case we look back next week and see what was wrong, what was correct, all that stuff. So the first potential downfall of this mixed condition model, and it's usually the case with me, is I put no putting statistics in here. I went back and looked at Johnny Vegas, his 2 wins at Glen Abbey. I looked at Rory, his win in I don't think he won 2019's Canadian, but he played well. I went back and checked a few of the Canadian Open champions from Hamilton and Glen Abbey. They didn't have any putting form coming in, especially Johnny Vegas. Johnny Vegas is not a good putter anyway, and he's won twice at the RBC Canadian Open. Granted, a different course, but it was still bent. So I didn't feel like putting form coming in was all that important. That's why I don't have it in the final mixed condition model. Although we did look at putting form in the Data Dive show. Something else that could be completely wrong is the fact that I don't have any easy or any difficult. I've leaned very, very heavily into the less than 7,200, the short course filter, because that's the only thing I am confident that we know. It is for a fact it's going to be less than 7,200 yards. So if it is indeed difficult all 4 rounds, if it is indeed easy all 4 rounds, that would certainly adjust rankings, at least analytically. Those are the 2 big downfalls that I see in this data model that could potentially come up. But let's go ahead and reveal at least my rankings from the numbers, and then we'll get into the price board. So when I ran the data model, again, this is just purely by the numbers. My top 10 come out to Shane Lowry, Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, HV3, Rory, Sebastian Munoz, Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Cam Smith, and Chris Kirk. And you'll notice I have a few players unstarred. I usually star the top half just to give a quick look at players. Now, CT Pan, again, has withdrawn, so I don't have a star next to him. Pat Perez, Nate Lashley, Patrick Reed are the 4 golfers that were in my original top half that have withdrawn. But there is a look at the top 10 analytically for me. I don't think there's too much of a surprise here. I think all 10 are in the top 13 or so in price, pretty chalky. It is not a loaded field by any means, so not a lot of opportunity for a shocking result per se. So let me go ahead and bring up the projected ownerships per Fantasy National. Again, everything that I am quoting here, at least in projected ownerships, is from Fantasy National. So let's sort by salary and go through the price board here. We have 6 players in the 10Ks. Scotty Scheffler, JT, Rory, Cam Smith, Shane Lowry, and Sam Burns. You can see here, Burns is my lowest. He's 12th. I'm really high on all of these guys. The whole analytical community is, or at least through Fantasy National. All 6 of these guys are at 14% or above. You have the number 1, number 2, number 3 projected owned players in here, and then number 6. So the first, second, and third. First, most projected owned player, Rory, makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, he's played the Canadian Open extremely well in the past. He has been playing some very good golf recently as well. He is actually the 4th lowest in my rankings in the 10Ks, but he's 5th total. So by no means am I down on Rory. It just shows that I'm very, very high on Shane Lowry again this week. I'm very high on Scheffler and JT. But Rory is your projected number 1 owned player. Number 2 is, Shane Lowry. So I apologize. I saw Fitzpatrick. He's actually at 9,900. He's the second most projected owned. So you have the first, the third, and the fifth most projected owned players in the 10K. So first, Rory. Second, Shane Lowry, 17.5%. Again, I wasn't able to avoid the chalk on Lowry last week. I'm not going to do it again this week. Number 1 player in my rankings. He does not play the length of par 3s well that are prevalent here at St. George's, but literally every other metric that I have put in the data model, he is top 15. And even the par 3s, he's in the top half. So a lot to like with Shane Lowry. Number 1 in my model. I'm going to use him. He's going to be chalky. I'll set myself up for 5v5s. Don't care. I'm going to use Shane Lowry. He's playing some fantastic golf. The 5th most projected owned player is Scotty Scheffler. So that means that Burns, Smith, and JT are getting less love. I'm not going to say none. All of them, again, are above 14%. But in the area, you could argue that Cam Smith and JT are the pivots. Now, I'm not saying they're a pivot for the contest. I'm saying if you're coming into the 10Ks, JT and Cam Smith are the pivot for the area. But again, they're both at 14%. So everybody in the 10Ks is getting used. You're not going to find any uniqueness here. If I had to rank them, all things considered, my rankings, projected ownership, I am probably still going to go Shane Lowry first. I'm just that high on him this week. I'm probably going to go Cam Smith second, seeing him at 14%, tied with JT as the lowest projected owned percentage in the 10Ks. And even though I have JT higher in the rankings, Cam Smith saving $600 in pricing, and this is a prototypical Cam Smith course. He's number 1 in strokes gained approach in this field. He's number 5, giving himself opportunities on short courses. He's 3rd in par 5s. So something else I meant to have mentioned during the metrics of the data model, all of these statistics here, approach greens, all of that is dating back to the beginning of the PGA Tour season. So 9/13 to 2021. Going back that far allowed me to grab enough data for enough of the guys in all of the categories. So even though we do look at some filters, going all the way back to, say, July 1st for putting or whatnot, I went to the beginning of this PGA Tour season and had enough data for everybody in all of these metrics. But anyway, so Shane Lowry first in the 10Ks. To me, Cam Smith is second. All things considered, pricing, projected ownership, expected performance, all that stuff. I'm probably going to go Justin Thomas third, Rory fourth, Sam Burns fifth, and Scotty Scheffler sixth. And by no means am I down on Scheffler. It's just there are so many values that I like in the 9 and 8Ks that for me it's hard to justify using Scotty Scheffler this week. Now, if he goes and wins, it's not to be unexpected. I'm not saying that he's going to miss the cut or anything. But in DFS, there's a whole lot of value this week that I see that taking up 11-1 on Scotty Scheffler when I'm just as high on Shane Lowry at $1,000 less. That's why I have Scheffler sixth in rating or in my rankings of 10Ks. So we move now to the 9s. And the aforementioned Matt Fitzpatrick is the second most projected owned player. But the other players in the 9Ks, you have Matt Fitzpatrick, Harold Varner III, Corey Connors, Terrell Hatton, Tony Finau, Adam Hadwin, Sebastian Munoz, Chris Kirk, and Keith Mitchell. So number 2, Fitzpatrick. Number 4, projected owned player, Corey Connors. Home open makes a whole lot of sense. 8th in my rankings. Love Corey Connors this week. Very, very chalky. Tony Finau is 6th. Very chalky. A lot to like here, although he has not been giving himself the most opportunities when it's short, but his irons have been good. He's been hitting greens. He's very good from the length of par 4s. He's great at par 4s in general. There's a lot to like with Tony Finau. There are no real pivots in this area contest-wise. Again, everyone in the 9s is at least at 11.5% projected owned. I imagine that's going to be even higher because the 11.5% projected owned player is Adam Hadwin, and it's his home open, just like Corey Connors. I really like Adam Hadwin this week, so I'm definitely going to be using him. If he's indeed at 11.5%, I'm going to fire him up as much as I can. I can't see how he's at 11.5%. I mentioned this about Patrick Cantlay. I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago. He ended up being a lot more used than I thought he was going to be. I mentioned that in the DFS Tactics show, but if he stayed at 11 or 10.5%, whatever he was that week, that I was going to use him a lot. He ended up missing the cut that week, so the lineups that I did use with him were shot from the beginning. But I really like Adam Hadwin this week. Again, I don't see how he stays at 11.5% projected ownership. And if he is indeed 11.5% projected ownership, I'm going to use him a lot. If he misses the cut, I'm going to have a bad week. But elsewhere here in the 9Ks, I am very, very, very high on Harold Varner. 4th in my data model. His worst statistic is higher than Shane Lowry's worst statistic. Shane Lowry was, where'd he go? There he is. He was 59th in the par 3s. Harold Varner is 53rd at the length of the par 4s. The reason why Harold Varner is not number 1 or number 2 is that he is not nearly in the top 10 as much as Shane Lowry is in the other statistics, but he's very, very solid. Top 10 in approach, top 10 in greens, top 10 in performance on short courses, on par 5s. There's a lot to like with Harold Varner. He's only at 12%, so seeing Varner and Hadwin at 12% and below, I really, really like, and that gives you a bit of insight into the kind of lineups that I'm building this week that I mentioned in the opening. Elsewhere in the 9Ks, I like Kirk, I like Sebastian Munoz. They're both getting some love here. Kirk at 15%, Munoz at 14%. Hatton, I always talk about Tyrrell Hatton. He always seems to be underappreciated, especially in DFS. He seems to be fairly popular this week at 15%. He is the lowest rated in the 9 and 10Ks for me. I still like Tyrrell Hatton's 23rd. Now, he's got a little bit of the same issues that Tony Finau has. Doesn't give himself the most opportunities on short courses. He does not play well at the length of par 3s here at St. George's. There's still plenty enough to like. Top 20 in birdies or better. So that is something that will have to even out eventually or normalize in statistical terms. He'll either stop giving himself opportunities and therefore this number will rise, or he will start giving himself a whole lot more opportunities to match the rate of conversion that he is getting. So if this number falls, Tyrrell Hatton is looking like a stellar play and even an outright bet, perhaps. If he starts giving himself more opportunities and keeps converting at the rate that he does, that's why I'm so high on Tyrrell Hatton. Again, here in the 9Ks, this is why I had Scotty Scheffler 6th of 6 in the 11Ks. It's not that I'm down on him. I'm not advocating you fade him. There's just so much value in here. Varner, Connors, I like Hatton. Finau, good. I love Hadwin this week. Munoz and Kirk. Even Mitchell, I really like. He's number 2 in the par 5s. He's number 6 in birdies or better on short courses. He won the Honda, a short course. Now, the Honda is very difficult. I don't think this is going to play very difficult, but Keith Mitchell has won on a short course. He's number 2 on performance on short courses. So a lot to like here. So yeah, there's the look at the 9Ks, the 2 pivots in the area. Again, not pivots for the contest or the entirety of the price board, but pivots in the area are Hadwin and Varner, and I love both of them. So I'm probably going to be using both and combining them in lineups quite a bit. So if one or both miss the cut, it's going to be an atrocious week for me. It's just the way it is. Moving into the 8s, you see here there have been quite a few withdrawals and guys that I'm not really excited about. So Patrick Reed has withdrawn. CT Pan has withdrawn. So elsewhere here in the 8Ks, you have Johnny Vegas at 11, just over 11%. You have Brendan Todd at 12.5%. I am much higher on Johnny Vegas than I am Brendan Todd, as you can tell by the rankings. Like, I understand the reasoning behind Brendan Todd. He hits a lot of fairways. The rough is supposed to be very penal this week. I didn't put any off the tee metrics in this, so I understand the reasoning. But seeing him at 12.5%, that's close to a fade for me. I mean, the irons have not been great. Now he can putt. That is his saving grace. So if you think putting is going to be a big factor this week, Brendan Todd is somebody that you're going to want to consider. He also plays very well in the wind. We'll take a look at Wind Finder here in a bit. But I mean, you can see here the putting gained almost 5.5 on bench at the Charles Schwab. Gained 1.5 at the Byron Nelson. He's been good at on Bermuda. 5.5 at the RBC Heritage, 4.5 at the Valero. So, I mean, the guy is a great putter. If you want to lean into putting, Brendan Todd is a fantastic play. I'm just not going to go there. He is top half in my data or in my rankings analytically, but 12.5% is just too high for me. So I'm going to fade Brendan Todd. I'm not really there on Mackenzie Hughes. Now he is number 1 on strokes gained total. Short courses, so it's a little bit dangerous. He's also a fellow Canadian. His National Open, it's a little dangerous. He's number 1 in performance on short courses. He's number 1 birdies or better gained on short courses. But you can see here the irons have not been good at all. Therefore, he's not been hitting a lot of greens. Now he is a around the green type player, so he can scramble. I'm sure he knows his way around St. George's. I'm just not there with him. Tigala, much of the same. He is not good on short courses. Unlike Hughes, he's just not good on short courses. He's not good with sand saves. He's just not good on short courses. That's why Tigala rates so low for me in my data model. But it looks like other than those 2 players, the 8Ks are kind of getting ignored, especially with CT Pan and Patrick Reed having withdrawn. So you've got Justin Rose at 7%. I don't mind Justin Rose. I'm not in love with it, but I don't mind it. Another player that can find a bunch of fairways, can plod his way around a course like Brendan Todd. A little bit more expensive than Brendan Todd, but if I'm going to try to look for that kind of player, I'm going to go to Justin Rose. I've talked about Johnny Vegas. Rasmus Højgaard, 5%. Mackenzie Hughes at 6.5%. Tigala at 8%. Like, the 8Ks are just getting ignored. So it looks like your fellow contestants are really leaning into the stars and scrubs, or if they're going balanced, they're trying to do 2 or 3 in the 9s and then come into the high 7s. So that is a look at least to me, what I'm seeing via Fantasy National, the lineup shells that your fellow contestants are going. But there's a look at the 8s. Let's move into the high 7s. You have 3 more players that are getting some love, and then another part of the area that's just getting ignored. So Aaron Rye is the highest in the upper 7s at 12.5%. I like Aaron Rye a whole lot. I've got a win ticket on him, so I understand the love for him. The par 4 is great. The irons have not been terrible, but he has been very good on short courses. I believe it was the Pebble Beach or the Farmers that he was right there, and then so it was the Farmers. That's a long course. But he's played, I mean, look, the RSM, short course. Mayakoba is a short course. He's generally played well when it's short. So there's a lot to like here with Aaron Rai. Like I said, I've got a win ticket on him, top 15 in greens, top 15 opportunities gained when or on short courses. So this is the inverse of Tyrrell Hatton. Remember, Tyrrell Hatton did not give himself a lot of opportunities, but converted at a very high rate. The inverse of that is Aaron Rai, where he is giving himself a whole lot of opportunities. He's not been converting them. So again, something else that should normalize over time. He's either going to stop giving himself a lot of opportunities, or he's going to start converting a whole lot more often on the opportunities he's given himself. Generally, I like this combination more than Tyrrell Hatton's, because we've at least seen the propensity that Aaron Rai can give himself the opportunities, and putting is fickle. It can be there one week and not be there another. So if Aaron Rai has a good putting week and is giving himself the average of opportunities that he's been giving himself, which in relation to this field is a bunch, then you're going to have a very good week and you're on to something there. So that's why I'm very high on Aaron Rai. Top 5 in the length of par 4s here. Pretty darn good on short courses in general. So a lot to like here with Aaron Rai. He is the chalky option in this area, but I like Aaron Rai a lot. The other two above 10%, JJ Spawn. I like JJ Spawn this week. He's only sitting at 10%, so it's not that he's a fade for me. But there's enough around here that I like that I don't have to rush to use him. But I do like JJ Spawn quite a bit. I mean, you can see top 15 in irons, top 5 in greens, top 5 in performance on short courses. There's a lot to like with JJ Spawn. And then the other player in the upper sevens that's getting more than double-digit % love is Austin Smotherman. I have been an Austin Smotherman believer for seemingly a long while now. Again, the irons play well. He gives himself quite a few opportunities on short courses. Just like Aaron Rai, he's not been converting them. So you like that combination of the ability to give himself opportunities, he's just not been converting them. So when the putter does get hot, you're onto something there. Good at par 5s, good at the length of par 3s. A lot to like here with Austin Smotherman. So elsewhere in the upper sevens, a couple of players I want to highlight for you all. Nick Taylor, a fellow Canadian, is at 8.5%. Some very, very elite stats that I think is going to play a whole lot this week. Number 7 in strokes gained approach in this field since the start of the PGA Tour season. He has been playing okay. He just hasn't gotten the name recognition because he hasn't had a top 5. But his irons are very, very good. Very good in greens, speaking to the iron play. Top 10 on performance on short courses. Top 5 in opportunities on short courses. Now he has been converting them a little bit better than, say, Aaron Rai and Austin Smotherman, but still third best at giving yourself opportunities when it's on short courses. There's a lot to like with Nick Taylor. And again, being a Canadian, his National Open, there's a lot to like here. Especially if it does play easy like I think it could. You see the irons, they've been very good the past 2 of the past 3 events. They've been very, very good. He was still positive at the Byron Nelson. He has some top 25s, top 15s. So it's not that he's actually gotten, 3 top 20s. The Pebble Beach, a short course. Honda, a short course. Wells Fargo, short course or shorter. Can't remember. Yeah, shorter. TBC Potomac, short course. So a lot to like here with Nick Taylor. I'm very, very high on Nick Taylor. He sits at 8.5%. I also don't mind Patrick Rogers at that same price. Patrick Rogers popped on quite a few of the filters Monday night in the Data Dive show. Very good on bent green. So if you want bent green putting performance, Patrick Rogers is somebody to take a look at, like Brendan Todd. Now, the Memorial last week was not very good. Tough, difficult conditions. Mexico Open, good. Very good. Byron Nelson, good. Charles Schwab, good. And going back into the fall, the Fortinet, very good. So a lot to like here with Patrick Rogers. I think it could be a sneaky good week for him. So those are the two main players in the upper sevens I wanted to highlight for you all at 7,700. And then also Alex Smalley, all of that being predicated on the greens. The greens are so small here that as long as Alex Smalley's hitting them in regulation, he should be okay, because he's not been great on short courses. He hasn't given himself the most opportunities on short courses. But again, just like Aaron Rai, Austin Smotherman, this has to normalize. Somewhere this has to normalize. Now, the opportunities aren't nearly as high as a Austin Smotherman, as an Aaron Rai, but that pattern is still there. Again, I'm so high on Alex Smalley because of the greens and regulation. His irons just aren't this bad. So I like Smalley this week quite a bit. So there's a look at the upper sevens. Again, those three players are the ones that are getting some love. Like Tyler Duncan's close to 10%. He's a 9.5. Let's see, elsewhere, like Patrick Rogers, 8%. Mark Hubbard, 7%. Yeah, I highlighted the two at 7,700 that I really like this week, Nick Taylor and Patrick Rogers. And then I don't mind Alex Smalley. But again, all of that being predicated on the one narrative of greens and regulation. If he's not hitting greens, it's going to be a bad week for Alex Smalley. Let's move to the low sevens. And this is where some of the contestants are coming to, assumingly for their balanced lineup or to fill out their stars and scrubs here. You've got two players, again, above 10%. You got Ryan Armour right at 10%. And you have David Lipsky at 13.5%. And that's really a shame because you see how high I am on David Lipsky. I love David Lipsky this week. Top 10 in par fives, top 15 on opportunities on short courses, but not converting. You're seeing a pattern here of players that I'm really high on this week. Top 20 in greens. The irons have been good. The proximity, good. So very high on David Lipsky. I'm not very happy to see him at 13.5%. I can't say it's a fade, although if I'm being objective, it probably should be. But I like David Lipsky, so I would suggest if you are very high on Shane Lowry, if you're very high on David Lipsky, either accept a 4v4 or work your way around and use enough lineups till maybe you can split those two somehow in some way. Because I'm very high on them both. I'm very, very high on Lipsky, and of course Lowry's number one in my data model. But elsewhere here in the low sevens, you have not a whole lot going else either. I said this is where your fellow contestants were going. It's really all in those two players, a lot of it being Lipsky. JT Poston, 8.5%. Like, this feels like it could be a JT Poston type tournament, but I mentioned it Monday. I have no inclination on JT Poston. He's just one of these guys that I call a popper. They'll come out of nowhere, they'll pop and win an event or top five and then disappear. Andrew Landry is somebody else that falls into that category for me, at least. I can't narrow down JT Poston. I can't narrow down Andrew Landry, players of like that. Let's see. Schwab at the same price that Armour and Lipsky are at. I don't mind Matthias Schwab at 5%. Obviously much, much higher on Armour and Lipsky. Grillo, 5.5%. Let's see, coming out into the 7, like Adams Vinson, 9%. Okay, another fellow Canadian. Top 5 in opportunities. Now, this is the perfect combination. Giving himself a lot of opportunities and converting them at a very high rate. The irons have been okay. The greens have not. He's been very, very good on short courses. His performance at the Honda, very, very good that week. The Sony, extremely short course, played extremely well. Pebble Beach, while it was a middling to a clunker finish, he still played it okay. A top 30 at the Heritage, a short course. So he's played short courses extremely well. I don't mind Vincent at all. But, he's at 9%. Elsewhere, like Doug Gim is the highest at 7K. He's at 7%. So not a lot here other than David Lipsky is getting used and Ryan Armour. So it looks like your fellow contestants are probably bottoming out at a Lipsky and Armour duo at the bottom end of their pricing. So yeah, I gave you a couple of names there. I don't mind Vincent. He is at 9%. It's just it's a shame. I really like David Lipsky this week. I don't mind Schwab. Poston, I just can't narrow him down, but if you have a feel for JT Poston, fire him up. I like Gim. I like Andrew Novak more at the 7Ks than Doug Gim. I think Doug Gim's a fine play. Andrew Novak's quite a bit of a pivot in the entirety of the contest at 2.5%. I like Andrew Novak this week. Very good at the length of the par 3s. Very good at the length of the par 4s. The irons have been okay. He's been a little suspect on short courses. It's fair. There's enough reason to be gun shy about it, but I don't mind Andrew Novak. So let's go into the 6Ks. There is one player that's getting any kind of modicum of use at 7%. It's Vaughn Taylor. It's who I think is going to be the best 6K play this week. There's a lot to like here. You see top 20 in my rankings, top 25 in greens, top 25 in strokes gained approach, number 2 at the length of the par 3s, number 3 in the proximity that's expected to be most prevalent here, almost top 20 in the opportunities on short courses. Again, you see the pattern here. A lot of opportunities, has not been converting, and Vaughn Taylor is a pretty darn good putter. Maybe not on bent, but he is generally a pretty darn good putter. He just hasn't putt well of late, but you see historically he's been above average, and even as far back as 20 events ago, he was even better. It wasn't too long ago, around this time last year, he was gaining 8, 9, 6. This guy is not this putter here. He is not this guy here. Something's either wrong or has changed or something. So if you're willing to take that gamble, and I am this week, by all means, I think Vaughn Taylor is a good play. There's a reason to like him, but there is also a reason why he is getting the most love in the 6Ks. He is at 7%, but that is the highest of the 6Ks. So there is a lot to gain here if there are players that you like, and there are 2 specifically that I do like. The last 2 weeks, I've mentioned Luke Donald, and while I'm decently high on him, I'll use him if he fits the team. Again, Luke Donald's, all of his appeal is in the irons, and he's very good at the proximity. So I will mention him. That's not the player that I'm really, really high on. The player that I'm very, very high on is actually Robert Garrigus at 6,400. You see here, he doesn't really have an atrocious statistic. Now, he is bottom half in, say, the length of the par 4s and par 4s in general. But at 6,400, you're getting a player that is top 20 in strokes gained approach this PGA Tour season, or at least top 20 in this field for the PGA Tour season. He's top 15 in par 5s. He's birdieing or better on short courses at a very good clip. Now, he's not giving himself as many opportunities, so this is kind of the Terrell Hatton. Something he has to normalize. Either he's going to give himself more opportunities and convert at the same rate, or he's just not going to convert at the rate that the opportunity, like this, wouldn't be sustainable. I don't know. For 1 week, I'm willing to take a gamble on it because of the irons, the small greens, which he's okay at. Again, I'm not advocating or going out and putting a win bet on Robert Garrigus, top 20 or even or anything like that. But in a DFS format at 6,400, all the price savings you're getting with him, I think he's going to be very, very useful. So he allows you to come down, 6,400, and sneak in maybe a Lowry and a Fitzpatrick, or a Lowry and a Chris Kirk. Get you even more of the upper end of the price board. So that's the one player I'm very, very high on in the 6Ks. I'm very high on Vaughn Taylor as well, but we covered him because he is the most often used player in the 6Ks. There's a couple of other names I want to throw out at you. The first one being Brandon Wu. I used Brandon Wu quite a bit at the Corrales, and it was a very successful week for me. He's just been playing. He's just fairly solid. Now, the irons have been good, but he's been hitting a lot of greens. He's been good at the par fives, good at the proximity. He's quite a all or nothing in terms of the statistics that I've used in this data model. But he's been playing okay. He really has. Tied for second in Mexico. I said the Corrales. It was the Puerto Rico. I knew it was one of the two. So sorry. He top 5 at the Puerto Rico. He was still top 30 at Corrales. Valspar. Now, it hasn't been good as of late, but he still made cuts. He made the cut at the Memorial. We talked about this at the data dive, and I believe also in the initial research. He played well at the Memorial. He just didn't make a putt. You have to try to miss putts if you're going to be this bad that week. So he just couldn't putt. Otherwise, he'd have been, top 30 or 40 or so. Charles Schwab just wasn't good. Byron Nelson was fine. He didn't hit his irons. So you see here, the skills are all there. He has to put it together. I talked about this in the fall with Sung Jae. I was going to miss on Sung Jae whenever he won because he was playing whack-a-mole. 1 week he would gain with the putter, and then the next week he'd lose but gain with the irons, and then off the tee. It was just all of the skills were there. He wasn't putting it all together in a week. Now, is Brandon Wu going to do that this week? Probably not. But in DFS, he's going to be worth it at 6,900. And if he does, you're hitting a home run because Brandon Wu is at 2% projected ownership. What I'm saying is the skills are all there. He just has to put it together in a week. But the skills are all there for Brandon Wu. So that's the first of the two players that I want to highlight. The other one is quite a bit speculative, even by my standards. But take a look at Callum Tarrant. Callum Tarrant has been, I will say, sneakily playing okay. None of these finishes are inspiring by any means. Now, he did top 5 at Puerto Rico, like Brandon Wu did. He also top 30 the Honda the week before, which is, again, a short course. Irons were good. Now the putter is starting to get hot, and look at where these events are. The Wells Fargo, bent. Byron Nelson, bent. He's been okay at bent. He was just terrible at POA. Some guys just are terrible at POA. He's very good when it's easy. That's his preferred, difficulty is easy. It's quite speculative. I get it. Take a look at Callum Tarrant. He might be worth throwing in a lineup or two. He gives himself quite a few opportunities on short courses. He has been converting those opportunities at a decent rate. So I think this is going to be better than 66th. So that's what I have for you all as far as my look at the price board. Before we switch to Microsoft Excel, let's look at Windfinder. And tomorrow looks like the possibility for a washout. They're supposedly going to be getting a whole lot of rain early, very cool, breezy. So if play does happen tomorrow, the course is going to play longer, and it's going to be blustery, chilly. Really going to highlight the iron players. And then Friday could be a bit of a Friday PM, Thursday AM favor, but not knowing what the rain's going to do, if they're going to halt play or anything like that, I just can't give you a definitive, yes, this is a PM AM favor or an AM PM favor. I can't do that because I don't know how the course is going to adjust, how well it drains or anything like that. But if they do indeed get this wind that they are forecasting right now for Friday morning, it could be a potential issue, but it is supposed to warm up. And then you see the weekend, they are expected a little bit of rain on Saturday night, but doesn't look anything major, and just no wind. It just doesn't look like there's any wind on the weekend. So trying to get 6 to 6 through this. See, Thursday's a wild card. That's why I'm not too keen on trying to get an AM PM split. It's just a wild card. So there's a look at Windfinder. Let's bring up Microsoft Excel and let's go ahead and start making some lineups here. So give me 1 second while I adjust things here. Before we make lineups, let's talk about tiers. Again, I'm not a tiers aficionado. All I can do is go by the assumption of relative same ownership percentage as in classic contests. If I were to play tiers, tier 1 is Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, and Rory. I'm probably going to go JT, especially if the ownership is lower than the other two. I think Rory's probably the safest play, but I'm going to go JT. Tier 2, you have Cam Smith, Shane Lowry, Sam Burns, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Corey Connors. I'm going Lowry all day, every day. He's number 1 in the daily model. I think if I had to pick one player, it's Shane Lowry to win the tournament this week. I just like where his game's at, so I'm going to take Lowry. Tier 3, HV3, Terrell Hatton, Tony Finau, Adam Hadwin, and Chris Kirk. Quite honestly, I think Finau is the 5th of these 5. I'm going to go Harold Varner because I'm very high on him. And again, assuming that the ownerships are roughly the same as in classic contests, you're going to get the most uniqueness out of Varner. I like Adam Hadwin a lot. I think Hatton could be sneaky good. I think all 5 of these are good choices. I'm going to go Harold Varner. I would not blame you one bit for going Adam Hadwin. I think Finau is 5th of these 5, but not a bad play. Tier 4. You got Sebastian Munoz, Keith Mitchell, Justin Rose, Sahith Theegala, Johnny Vegas, and Rasmus Højgaard. Højgaard is a complete wild card. If you have a strong feeling about him using, I mean, he's top 30 in my rankings. I'm going to go Johnny Vegas on the predication of it being a ball strikers course. But Munoz, good play. I like Keith Mitchell this week. He has shown his propensity for short courses. I'm very out on Theegala. That's the one player I would not be using or consider using. Sorry, I got Rose Highland. I'm not going to use Theegala in Tier 4. Otherwise, I think all of these are fine plays. I'm going to go with Vegas. Tier 5, you got Mackenzie Hughes, Brendan Todd, Aaron Rye, Mark Hubbard, Cameron Champ, and Patrick Rogers. For me, it's a pretty easy Aaron Rye. I do like Patrick Rogers. I'm out on the majority of these other players. Finally, Tier 6, you have Adam Long, Nick Taylor, JJ Spawn, Dylan Fratelli, Dean Burmester, and Austin Smotherman. Again, pretty easy for me. It's Nick Taylor. I don't mind JJ Spawn. I don't mind Smotherman. I'm pretty out on these other 3. So there's a look at the tiers contest. Let's start building some classic lineups here. So get rid of those columns. And let me adjust here, adjust the keyboard and such. So if we're going to start building some chalky lineups, we're going to have to use the chalkiest of chalky, where it starts with Rory. If Rory is the number 1 projected owned player, you start there. And there are 2 different ways it seems like your contestants could be going, but it seems like they are bottoming out at both David Lipsky and Ryan Armour. Now, if they are comfortable with that being their 2 bottom players, that leaves them quite a bit at 8,300. Now, if these 2 are their 2 bottom, then they're going to have to be building a balanced lineup. If they are reaching into the 6Ks and using these 2 elsewhere as well in the lineup, then they're going starters and scrubs. But based on what I see from Fantasy National, I'm going to assume that they're going to be building a balanced lineup. So if that's the case, if they want to try to sneak Shane Lowry in, they probably could. But I'm going to go to Corey Connors. Let's see, that leaves them at 7,650. Let's see, they got Lipsky. Then they might be coming to, say, an Austin Smotherman here, which leaves them 78. That's Adam Long, who's not getting a lot of love. Cameron Champ. So it looks like Connors might be a bit extreme in the price for them. Someone else they could be coming down to, let's say Tony Finau maybe. And if they use that same Austin Smotherman, now they're at 8,000. Aaron Rye getting some love. They could come down off Finau even more. That's a 14% projected ownership here in this lineup, and that is I don't like that at all. I try to stay at about 11 and under, preferably even 10% or under. So that is there is a look at one of the shells that they could be doing. Something else that they could be doing, I mentioned that they are coming down to Vaughn Taylor at 7%. This is not nearly as chalky as the other options. It would also help if I could spell. So if they're coming down to Vaughn Taylor, then I'm going to try to use different names. However, it is still the chalky of chalky. It's Rory. Then maybe they're trying to squeeze in a Shane Lowry. And then from here, maybe going something to a Brendan Todd, David Lipsky. Yeah. Say like a David Lipsky. And then that leaves them at 71. Not a whole lot getting in play here. Like JT Poston's at 72. Okay, Adams Vincent, he's at 9%. He could be getting some love then. So here's another lineup that's about 13%. This is a different take. It's still a balanced-ish team, but they're dipping into the 6Ks. So again, another 13% I don't like. I'm going to save the kind of lineup construction I've been toying with for last. See, someone else or some other way they could be going something maybe to the effect of, say, like a Matthew Fitzpatrick, coming down to a Chris Kirk maybe, and then trying to fill out from there. Again, I hate to use the same guys, but it's really an all or nothing type week. You're either getting used or you're not. This gives them, this leaves them at 8,200, depending on how far they want to go on this other player. I won't use Austin Smotherman. Let's say they come down to, let's say, like a JJ Spawn, who's getting some love at 10% at 77. This leaves them 87. That's Sahith Theegala, who's not getting a whole lot of love, but like a Johnny Vegas. There's another 13% in a more traditional balanced type lineup. So to combat these chalky-ish lineups, again, I'm going to save the one that I've been working with for last. But let's say you want to come up into the 10Ks. I mentioned that I'm very high on Cameron Smith just because of the price savings you get with him at 10.3 as opposed to, say, a 10.9 with Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, the price savings. So let's try, Cameron Smith. And again, it's all relative. Let's see how far you're willing to come down. If you're not comfortable coming down into the 6Ks, I mentioned Doug Gim at 7,000. You could be, comfortable using. If you're not willing to come down that low, again, maybe an Adams Vincent, Lipsky, Armour at 73. I'm going to bottom out at Doug Gim at 7,000 just to say you're not comfortable going into the 6s. So if that's our boundary, then from here it depends on if you want to go more stars and scrubs or more balanced. I'm going to go with a bit more balanced. So if you go Cameron Smith and then say maybe an Adam Hadwin. So now you're looking at some pretty good uniqueness here, and you still have the 10 and 9K shell that your fellow contestants are using. And then coming up from Doug Gim, let's see, someone else, like I mentioned Patrick Rogers. I don't mind him. Much higher on Nick Taylor, but just to give you some different options here, I don't mind Patrick Rogers. That leaves us, a 79 and a 78, basically. If you're willing to use both Patrick Rogers and a Nick Taylor, you can come up to 8,000, which is Aaron Rye. This is right at 10%. It's a lot more of a balanced look of a lineup. So that is a direction that you can absolutely go. It's somewhat similar to what I've been doing, but I've been dipping into the sixes. So the lineup shell that I've been most frequently using, I mentioned you might not be comfortable going down to him. I am. I'm a lot more comfortable using Vaughn Taylor, but I don't mind going Robert Garrigus if I need to. But I'm still avoiding all of the 10Ks. It's not that I don't like them. I like them all. I'm trying to be unique in the sense of lineup construct or the lineup shell as opposed to the players in the lineup, because I'm actually using some fairly chalky players. So I've been starting my team at Harold Varner, and I am bottoming out at Robert Garrigus. The goal that I've been trying to get to, I'm trying to make a Stars and Scrubs team, quote Stars and Scrubs, having 4 players at 8,500 or more, and then bottoming out wherever I can. Garrigus being the bottom, and then this 5th player, whatever I can do. But that's been the goal of mine, is to start this team at Varner, maybe Fitzpatrick, although he's more chalky. I'm very high on Varner. I could come down to Connors. I could come down to Hatton if I wanted to. I'm trying to use Varner here, especially since he is the least owned of the upper nines. So if you go Varner, and then, I mentioned, like a Keith Mitchell, I don't mind, a Chris Kirk, Sebastian Munoz, but I'm definitely using Adam Hadwin in this. I talked about it in our review of the 9Ks. These 2 players just aren't getting a whole lot of love in the area. Now they're getting love overall in the contest, but not in the area. So I'm using those 2. And then, my preference is to use Chris Kirk, but I don't mind coming down to a Keith Mitchell or a Justin Rose if I have to. This leaves me at 7,000. I mentioned Doug Gim. I'm higher on Andrew Novak. So there's a 9% projected ownership. You might be uncomfortable with Garrigus, but you still fit the quote Stars and Scrubs 4 players above 8,500. Now, if I really wanted to try and get the player that I really want, even though he's really chalky, David Lipsky, I'd have to come down to 88, which is Justin Rose, and I think he's fine. I think he's fine this week, and that's even less percent projected ownership at 9.5 or just over 9.5. But that is the shell of a lineup that I've been trying the most to work around. And of course, you can adjust how you want. Maybe you're not high on Justin Rose, you can come lower. Or if you're okay with a Johnny Vegas being your 3rd player, that gives you a whole lot more room to say maybe go to an Aaron Rye here and then work your way down from there, especially if you're not comfortable with the Garrigus. But the whole reason of this shell of starting with a Varner, a Fitzpatrick, a Connors, because I'm really high on Johnny Vegas this week. I'm also high on Varner. That's why I'm starting the team with them. I've been trying to squeeze 4 players in the same lineup above 8,500. And to do that, I've had to go down to Robert Garrigus, who I don't mind. I don't want to do it every time, mind you, but I don't mind going Robert Garrigus. So that is a look at the price board and the lineups your fellow contestants seem to be making, my what I'm doing to try to combat that and such. So in the comments, let me know how your weekend goes, what kind of lineups you used. Did you come down into the 6Ks? Who was your big fade that you seemed that you thought people were going to use and you just weren't on? Let me know in the comments. So thanks again for tuning in and listening, watching. I really do appreciate all the support that you all provide. So for any of the wagers that you have made this week at the RBC Canadian, for any of the DFS contests you've entered for the RBC Canadian, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.